of these vehicles that have got this level of smarts.
Absolutely.
All of the vehicles over time, doesn't
That's
it?
how all automotive technology has always worked. It starts at the high-end expensive stuff and then it trickles its way down. Seat belts, airbags, all of that sort of stuff was offered on the absolute top models first, worked its way down.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain. Real privilege to have Damien O'Carroll joining me again. It's been a while since we've had you on the show.
It has been a while. There's been a few things happen in between times, lockdowns and pandemics and things, but it's nice to be back.
Yeah, great to have you here in the studio, Damien. Before we go any further, just a big thank you to our show partners, to Vodafone, 2 Degrees, Spark, HP, Gorilla Technology, and Deal. So, yeah, thanks to them for keeping us on air and supporting the show. But Damien, back to you. Maybe for those that aren't familiar with you, and probably things have changed a little bit since last time we caught up anyway, you fill listeners in on where you fit into this big wide world of journalism and automotive and, a bit of tech in there.
Yes, well, I think the last time I probably appeared on one of your podcasts, I was a motoring journalist for stuff.co.nz. I've since been the motoring editor for a few years, and I've since just quit, and I'm finishing at the end of this week. So going back to a semi-freelance lifestyle and working for the opposition-driven.co.nz.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I've been certainly seen a lot of good content coming through stuff from a motoring perspective, and I think last few years we've just seen such a move in terms of the electric side. So I thought definitely time for a bit of a catch up and a bit of a chat around sort of the role of technology in the automotive world. The electric side is part of it, but there's all sorts of other aspects to the technology as well. And you've always been something of a technologist yourself. Always
go on, say it.
Nudging
tech nerd. Go on, say
it. Nudging yourself along with all the latest and greatest sort of gadgets and cameras and drones and whatnot. So it'll be good to delve into some of that. But before we do, there were a couple of other topics at the top. One was the new iPad from Apple. Now, this sort of has caught my attention for a couple of reasons. Now, we've got used to the fact that Apple prices have really risen across the board within this market because of the strength of the US dollar versus pretty much every other currency on the globe. Including the New Zealand dollar. So we've seen the sort of prices bumping up. But I got to say, I was caught really off guard by the price of the iPad. The new iPad, a 10-inch, it has a bit of a design change, but I wouldn't call it massively dramatic. But we've been buying the iPad. We've been able to buy an iPad in New Zealand for a little over $500 for quite a number of years. So it's kind of been a bit of a recommended go-to for education usage. In fact, my son uses a 10-inch iPad at school. You've been able to put a keyboard on and so on. So there's been options for that, and it's been a very, very just solid, good, stable, strong device, and just ideal in a bunch of those sort of scenarios where maybe in the past we would have looked at laptops or other products, and it's been an amazing product, an amazing price point, and sort of suddenly that's all changed. Now, I should clarify that this is the 10th generation iPad where the price has jumped. Slightly bigger screen, gone from 10.2 to 10.9 inch. It's gone from the Lightning connector to a USB-C. So that's what we're sort of expecting also to happen with future iPhones. Everything USB-C rather than the Lightning. Yeah. But from roughly sort of $550 up to $899 is a massive change. Now, yeah, you can buy the old generation model, but interestingly, because of the way Apple works with exchange rates and generally keeping things at the same price across their life, so other than the generational changes where we do see, say a new iPhone comes out, then last year's model might drop in price, but across the year or whatever time it's out there, often a product will stay at the same price. So tell me what phone you're using.
I've switched to a Samsung Galaxy Fold 4, which so far I'm absolutely loving, but it's quite battery centric, shall we say, at the moment?
Yeah. But an interesting thing with the Samsung is from the date they launch it to the date the replacement comes out.
Yeah.
The prices come down over that period, right? So Apple
does not
it's just static, right?
Yeah.
Other than the odd, there is occasionally ways to get a discount and so on.
Yes.
But not a whole lot. Now, what we've seen here is that the 9th generation iPad has gone up in price. So what we were seeing, the older product,
the older one has got more expensive.
If you order that from Apple now, it's up I think $649. You can still see the old stock of the 9th gen with New Zealand retailers at sort of $540 to $560. So if you want that, go and grab it now. Otherwise, it's going to be about $100 more very soon. But it looks like the days are gone of a $500 iPad. And so I'm really curious, does this open the door for some really good Android sort of competitors to come in? And Android hasn't been that great on the tablet front. Or is this just inflation and that's what it's going to be for an iPad going forward? Because it's at the price that it was, a whole lot cheaper than an iPhone. In many ways, you could sort of say, well, this was an anomaly. Apple must be making, very, very little on it. And with this flip of the pen, new pricing on a new model, there is going to be a huge amount of profit and margin in this product. And if they can keep their sales figures anywhere near what they were, this is going to put billions in Apple's back pocket.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's obviously the aim.
So
but I mean, we've seen everything increasing in price recently. It's happening all over the world, and coming from a car industry point of view, the whole semiconductor shortage has absolutely hammered the car industry there, and it's got to be affecting sort of the profit margins of other users, that use semiconductors. So it's I don't know. Maybe it's a nice just a realignment they needed to do, or maybe it is a cynical cash grab.
Obviously it's a new model. There's new tech in there and so on.
A new plug and a slightly bigger screen. Yeah.
But for New Zealand folks, it's over a 50% increase.
That's a big.
And that just
and it sort of comes at a segment of the market where, like I say, my mum's got an iPad. She won't use a computer. She couldn't use a computer, so I bought her an iPad. She calls it her computer. She can use it. It's super easy, and that's sort of the market where that bottom end iPad slots in, and it's.
So is it going to impact those Kiwi families who maybe they can't necessarily afford a full blown computer? In terms of a full laptop, full desktop, etc. Youngsters that if they're going to have something for school, it would have been a $500 iPad. Now at $900, some of those folks priced out of the market. I mean, Apple's not the brand we usually sort of associate with an entry-level sort of price point to technology, so maybe this is just a natural realignment, but it does seem like a real pity.
It does. I mean, the lack of sort of credible Android alternatives is what's given them that part of the market, obviously. So, yeah, you're probably right. If there was it's a great opportunity for a good Android tablet to come in, but the problem is there aren't really any that are that good. So.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying this as an Android user. I've got an Android tablet and I think it's great, but no, it's got severe deficiencies when compared to an iPad. So,
on the flip side, I think Apple has been doing some really good. They have been doing some great stuff We were often in the past had talked about them leaving, Macs for years and years between updates to processors and so on. Multi-generations of Intel chips would come out, and some of the Macs would wait years between updates, and that side of things definitely seems to have got onto a better cycle, which is good. So that there's definitely good stuff happening from Apple today. Mac OS 13 Ventura has landed, so we're seeing those sort of regular free updates to operating system come out, and of course we see that across our iPhones and our iPads as well, which happens sort of seamlessly, whereas Android's been a lot more variable on that front. So there's certainly a lot of good stuff that Apple are doing, but that one to me a little bit disappointing. So let's see how things play out. Now, other thing on a New Zealand front, because that pricing is somewhat quite specific to the New Zealand market. The increase isn't as large in the US and falls into sort of your area of automotive. I saw that News Hub have done a story in the last sort of 24 hours around the government clean car rebates and sort of highlighting how much of that has gone to those buying Teslas.
Yes.
Which, when you look at it, it kind of makes some sense because of, and they talked about $33 million has been paid out for those Model 3 purchases, and they've sort of picking on Tesla, I suppose, as, hey, look, this is a premium. This story is sort of saying, hey, Tesla's a premium product. Why does it need to be subsidized and so on? What's your thoughts on this? Is this sort of a bit of a cheeky angle to take?
I think so. I think it's a bit of a beat up because the reason that most of the subsidies have gone to Teslas is that the Tesla is the best selling electric vehicle in New Zealand. That's it. So, and also, they're all under the $80,000 cap, so they're all very much entry level Model 3s and Model Ys and so on. And also, Dan, I think I sort of mentioned to you before that Tesla's played a very good job of sort of selling itself as a high-end luxury maker when it's not sort of quite. I mean, it's in a different field simply because it's a totally different type of car. But Tesla has seen as this sort of aspirational brand like BMW and like Mercedes, but it's actually slightly more mainstream. But yeah, you get things like this because I think there's these expensive luxury cars that are getting all of this rebate. That, by the way, the ute buyers are actually paying for.
Thank you to the ute buyers.
Thank you to the ute
buyers that are buying.
Yeah,
ute
absolutely.
Ute
I mean, it hasn't the whole clean car thing hasn't slowed down the sale of utes in the slightest, even though they're paying an extra $5,000 or so.
It's just the cost, and you have to pay it.
Just the cost, they pay it. They want their ute, they buy it.
Yeah,
they're still
you
the
get
top.
what you need, right? It's there to do a job.
Yep, the Ranger and but most
In
of
a
the
lot
ones,
of cases.
most of the ones that are being
yeah.
sold aren't actually to do a job there. But anyway, the Ranger and the Hilux are still the top two best selling vehicles in New Zealand, and will continue to be. The Model 3 is the top selling EV in New Zealand, and it's an absolute fraction of those ones. So an article like that is taking probably the wrong look at it, and that it's, sure, it's going to these fancy Model 3s, but that in turn is feeding a lot more of them into the used market where they do become suddenly more affordable and people can buy them.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, I get where they're coming from, and it can seem a bit grating to people looking at these fancy Tesla buyers getting their big money back, but your ute buyers are paying for it.
Yeah, well, there was a quote from Transport Minister Michael Wood. Said the biggest number of vehicles that we have supported through the Clean Car Discount have actually been relatively affordable hybrid vehicles.
Yep.
So there's a lot more rebates given out on the hybrids. It's just at a lower, it's a lower figure. If you go full electric, you get that full 8,650 rebate. Right?
And I think the effect that the Clean Car program has had so far is that it's boosted hybrid and plug-in hybrid sales more than EV sales, and it's really pushed that segment, and even down to low emission petrol vehicles. That's some of them can get a rebate, and so that's sort of helping people decide to move into perhaps a smaller petrol car
Yeah.
to get a bigger rebate. So
I laughed at the quote from National's transport spokesperson, MP Simeon Brown, which started off with, "This is a reverse Robin Hood scheme. It's taking from people who don't have a choice about what kind of vehicles they drive, like farmers and tradies, and it's giving it to people who can afford to buy the expensive luxury vehicles like a Tesla." Anyway, we'll leave it at that on that one. Other than to say it does look as though there could be a change ahead from reading the story. We'll see how it plays out.
Oh yeah,
I'm I guess from a selfish perspective, thinking I may upgrade it at some point in the next little while. So kind of hopeful that the rebates there, from perspective when that happens. But we'll see how it plays out.
Well, there's a third side to the coin that's about to kick in too, which is the final stage of the Clean Car program, which is the charge that the fines that they believe it on the manufacturers for high emitting vehicles.
Yeah,
and
right.
that's going to realign new vehicle pricing quite drastically too.
So
suddenly
your
utes
it all
are going to
gets
get
passed
hit.
on, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
your utes are going to get a double hit.
Yeah,
so
right.
that you may see quite a realignment then. I don't know. I mean, the people that buy utes tend to buy them because they want to buy utes, or as they mentioned, they have to buy utes.
Yeah.
But given the majority of ute sales are still very much in the high end, about the same price as your Tesla Model 3, 70 odd grand mark.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, interesting. It hasn't worked out kind of revenue neutral for the government at this stage. Looks like they're saying they've collected close to 63 million from the heavy emitters tax and paid out about 95 million in subsidies. So we'll see how that plays out.
Then it's hard to say because the coal car market's been such a mess with COVID and with supply constraints and everything.
That's true.
Yeah.
And we also haven't seen road user charges applied to electric vehicles yet, which is inevitable at some point in time. So yeah. I guess I wanted to talk more about this kind of crossover between the automotive world and the tech world and the sorts of things you've seen. I know as a motoring journalist that you tend to get kept in the loop on lots of things. You would see a lot more vehicles than me or anyone that's really outside of that media world. So I'm kind of curious on the interesting things you've seen. I know you were recently in the US with General Motors, and you got to put pedal to the metal on a Hummer EV.
I did.
Tell us a little bit about that and around some of the tech.
Well, it was a fascinating trip because it was my first overseas trip in about two years.
Yeah.
So I had no idea how to pack and made a complete disaster of packing. That's another story. But it was General Motors basically took us over there to just show us their EV future because GM's just laying into it big time. They want to commit to being completely electric by I think 2035, and that's a much bigger target than any of the other car manufacturers have set themselves.
Yep.
So, and it's one of the biggest car companies in the world. It switches between it and Volkswagen as to which is the top selling, and then Toyota comes in occasionally and worries them. But so they're absolutely huge, and it's a huge commitment from them. Yeah, we got to drive the Hummer, which was the highlight of my trip, but it wasn't what we were there for.
Yeah.
But I will just say that the Hummer is absolutely awesome. It's it weighs 4 tons. It'll do 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in about 3 seconds. It's just terrifyingly fast.
Yeah,
absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
But the most interesting thing about it is it's on GM's new Ultium platform, what they call the Ultium platform, which is the battery pack and basically a skateboard EV platform. And it's got 2 Ultium battery packs on it. So it's 212 kilowatt hour battery pack.
That's
which,
insane,
it's
right?
Enormous, yeah.
Because it normally, I say a pretty top end, expensive EV with, most of them maybe. I mean, the smaller ones are like 50 kilowatt,
50, 60.
right?
Yep.
So the MG EV we'll talk about shortly.
Yep.
That's around sort of 50.
Yep.
The Tesla Model 3 that I got 2019 is just a little bit over 50.
Yep.
So that is huge.
90 to 100 is considered like really big.
Yeah.
So the Hummer's twice that, and it's insane. And it's it uses electricity at an offensively high rate, just like the petrol Hummers use petrol. So it's not exactly.
So what was it like to put your foot down with that much power?
Very unsettling. It's very unsettling. We only drove it on gravel, so we didn't get the full brutal. But I mean, it was anyone who's done sort of the whole Tesla, 100 P100 performance mode launch knows what the sort of moving of your internal organs feels like when you're doing this about 6 feet in the air and something that weighs 4 tons. Apparently it has worried a few of the federal safety regulators over there, and the fact that it is 4 tons that can do 0 to 100 in 3 seconds.
Yeah.
But it's an incredible thing. But the whole basis for GM's electric future is this Ultium platform, which we got a tour of all of their development area and looked at all how they made the batteries and everything. And they took us over there. So obviously you're thinking right-hand drive, right? That's what they denied the whole time. They said, no, look, we're not making any announcements about right-hand drive production. However, took great pains every time we talked about it to stress how easy it is for them to engineer a car in left or right-hand drive when it's on a skateboard battery platform, as opposed to an ICE vehicle where you've got all sorts of other components in the way.
Yeah, because with an internal combustion engine, a lot more complexity, isn't there? And electric, it's sort of like so much less to think about, to adjust. I mean, they made it sound pretty trivial, did they?
They wouldn't commit to anything, but one of the Aussie journalists we were with laid quite a nice little trap with one of the Cadillac designers we got to talk to. They showed us, and we got to drive the Cadillac Lyric, which is the new Cadillac first EV from Cadillac. It's an SUV. Beautiful thing. But this Aussie journalist was asking everyone about right-hand drive production, and no one would comment, so I can't comment on that. He asked the designer the same question. He goes, well, that's not my department. I'm a designer. I can't comment on that. And then he dropped in this little beauty of like, well, you must have designed a right-hand drive interior if you... And the designers went, I do know the answer to that, and I cannot say. So it was a pretty obvious gotcha he got there. That we're likely to see a right-hand drive Cadillac Lyric at some stage, and I would say that General Motors is, after killing off Holden and getting rid of it, slowly going to branch out into right-hand drive, but under their own names rather than have. They sold off Opel and Vauxhall in Europe, and so it'll be the GM brand. So it's a fascinating thing that they're doing, and the whole skateboard platform thing just opens up so much more flexibility for car manufacturers. It's going to be very interesting over the next decade or so to see what they can actually do with that, because they're still very much stuck in the mindset of a traditional car, and so are buyers. The people that buy the cars still want an SUV or a sedan or a pickup truck or something like that. But there's so much more flexibility in EV platforms to do different things.
Now, on the sort of the tech side, we've seen, I guess, continuous change over quite a few years now. I remember you and I have been ended up on a few trips together. Ford and Silicon Valley was just interesting that at that point, this was a good few years ago now, that, hey, we're set up, we've got a Silicon Valley base, we're cutting-edge tech now, and they were showing off all sorts of different things that they were investing in, involved in, from e-bicycles to car-sharing platforms they'd invested in, and all manner of things. I remember that stage sort of asking around their entertainment systems. They'd be showing off the latest thing in the US, and, but when's that coming to New Zealand? And there was always sort of quite a disconnect, but things have really, moved along, and locally here now, Ford, it's not unique to them, but you have your SIM card and you've got your data connectivity, you've got your apps and so on. But they do seem to be moving along quite nicely, and from that technological standpoint. And I mean, in their case, to look at it where they've kind of split out between the old internal combustion engine, the ICE cars, to the EV sort of side, which is I find is absolutely fascinating, and I'm kind of curious exactly how that plays out. Where you got others that are just, we'll take this vehicle, we'll have an electric version and a non-electric, which I guess Ford have done with the F-150, which is the the biggest selling. Well, is it the biggest selling vehicle in the US?
Certainly in the US, and it's one of the biggest selling globally.
Yeah. But tech just seems to, every year goes by, it's like, what's normal just gets better and better.
Yeah.
The Android Auto and CarPlay side, we've seen a whole raft of changes. Polestar is probably interesting one with their Polestar 2, which is sat on basically an Android platform for, I don't know what do you call it? I was going to call it the front end, but the more than just the entertainment system, the full control.
I think it's Android Automotive or something, and it's basically an architecture.
Sort of a look at
Volvo actually have switched to it too, because Volvo and Polestar obviously are essentially the same sort of thing underneath.
Yeah,
and I've heard they've had a few teething problems with it, but brilliant system. And basically, if you've got a Google account, you just sign in, you can get all your music, all your email, all your calendar straight there, and it's just so seamless.
And that's the thing we've got so used to with our
phones with having everything,
and how easy that is. So that's good. I think Google are going on that front, and where automakers are going. That said, the Polestar 3 is quite a big jump in price.
And everything in technology and performance, it's
it's a much higher end vehicle, isn't it?
Absolutely. They like to say that the Polestar 2 is it's its own thing and it's totally unique, but it actually runs on the same underpinnings as the Volvo XC40 and C40 EVs and everything else. So, but the 3 is the first sort of all Polestar EV that they'll be doing. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they'll still share things with Volvo. That's how you do it.
They're very much clarifying that they're a real premium, player, aren't they?
Yep, absolutely. They're sort of always aiming at that middle high ground. They're not sort of going at the real high ground stuff. The Polestar 3 may change that. I'm sure they'll make a push up probably with that, because there's also another one coming that they'll probably push down with. But no, it's fascinating watching that whole Google sort of Android and Apple CarPlay thing, because the manufacturers hate the idea of giving control of their cars to Apple or Google. So the fact that Google has gone out and made this automotive operating system and Polestar's embraced it is one way they're sort of getting around that, because for years Toyota hammered on its own sort of operating system that was far superior to a CarPlay and Android Auto, and it wouldn't allow access, and then they had to give in just because customer demand, they wanted it, so they gave it to them.
Yep.
But the whole idea of handing over, it's bad enough that they sort of hand over control of the infotainment system. They're very reluctant to give anything else over, which I kind of get. But
Apple are doing the same thing, aren't
yes,
they?
I believe they are. They're trying something too.
Their next generation is that you could have whatever, all screens basically being effectively handed over for Apple to run.
Yeah.
And this, to me, is quite fascinating in terms of the sort of delineation that we might get in the future. So, Tesla have got a big slice of the market as far as electric vehicles. They're the only player, really, that's got no Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, right? So they're trying to own that space. Yep. And time is going to really tell us whether they're able to sort of keep that without that, super close integration with the apps on your phone. And I think in order to do it, my guess is anyway, they're going to need to have a serious app store. They've already got, a lot of games. They've got the functionality, Netflix and YouTube and Spotify, and, there's a bunch there, but there are some gaps. And in some areas, it's just nice. You just jump into your vehicle, everything's there, and if you've got the premium connectivity, then it all just works regardless of whether you've got a data plan or not on your phone, and where you are. It's it's very good. But I can see Apple and Google sort of outmaneuvering them in terms of the interface. It's it's totally
Yep.
totally possible with just how tight that integration is. But yeah, I'm not quite sure how much it will matter and whether
No.
Tesla can carve out this niche, because I don't think anybody else is going to be able to longer term have a choice other than to kind
really.
of go Apple
Yeah.
or Android,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, I think it's interesting in the way that Tesla have done it well, in that they do have that connectivity. You can sign in with your Spotify account, you can sign in with your YouTube account, your Netflix account, all that. The only real difference between that and the Polestar Google system is you sign in once, it does everything on that one. You just have to sign in a few more times on the Tesla system. So they've got that, but then, like you say, as we move forward and things become sort of all the more integrated, it is going to be harder. But Tesla have, they've got the head start there. They had a really good app for connection from your phone to the car to control everything and all of that, and that's helped. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting going forward. And I can't see really, it's an inevitability. The car manufacturers seem to be giving more and more away to Apple and Google all the time. So they'll
it will allows them to
people just
focus a little bit differently, I suppose, in terms of if you give that to Apple and Google, then they're going to keep innovating, iterating, and so on. And it certainly has been a frustration for, I think, a lot of people in the past. You bought this car, the infotainment side is sort of static and but that future piece, if it is with Apple and Google, I would think it's going to get very, very good, and the integration and control from your phone, will step up. I don't know how how the likes of Ford have got their own app and the varying others that are in a similar sort of boat, how that's going to work and how it all kind of converges through and how long it takes as well.
I think the biggest fear from the car manufacturers in terms of that is that how many times do you, probably not so much as an Apple user, but as an Android user, particularly Android Auto, they do a new update, suddenly something doesn't work anymore. They don't want that in their cars. They really do not want that in their cars. And that's the big, I mean, as an Android user, I find Android Auto equally wonderful and screamingly frustrating at the same time when it just won't work or just stops in the middle of nowhere. And so that's what the car makers desperately don't want. So, it's going to be very, very interesting. I suspect they will keep sort of a baseline of their own control, but they'll be malleable to adapting to.
Are there any particular things that you've seen to date, not necessarily even with Android Auto, but just with the different tech platforms that sort of stick out? Like, for instance, on as a comparison to some of the stuff Tesla are doing. So one of the updates recently has given me access, so I can see the live access to the cameras in the vehicle, right? So I might be away from the vehicle, maybe I've got an alert that something's been triggered or what have you, or I've been away from the vehicle and it's parked at the airport parking somewhere or other, and I'm like, where have they parked it? Is it sort of safe, whatever? You can jump in. You can jump in and have a little bit of a look. Get alerts now if, say, the door's been left, boots left open or windows are down. And because of APIs, you can also run sort of third-party things. So, I've got one of the apps will alert me. Generally speaking, actually, although I did miss this last week, and it created me a little bit of hassle that it wasn't plugged in, or maybe I knew and I just ignored it. It's like, I'll be right without a night of charging. But usually, it just charges every night at home. But you can set these alerts, and I've even heard of, and I'm not sure whether anyone has implemented this or not, it looking at the weather and then going, hold on, it's about to rain. You've left your boot open or, windows down, links those two together and, gives you a little bit of a nudge. There's all manner of sort of bits and pieces of integrations and even Apple Watch type apps where you can do things and, control your car. And, there's silly stuff like toot the horn and flash the lights and so on. It's like, I'm not sure of the practical use on many of the things. But when you've got software, you can do stuff.
So
then,
why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's becoming sort of increasingly common now, particularly among EVs. Mercedes and BMW have got very good apps. I've had 2 long-term EVs in the last couple of years. One was the first MGZS, which I absolutely loved, but there was no connectivity whatsoever. Which I found very frustrating because you couldn't just open the app and see how much charge you had or anything like that.
Yeah, I noticed that, and I've just had it for a few days, and immediately I thought about it. I left it left it somewhere to get a little bit of a charge, and then I was thinking, how do I know how much it's charged? I don't have an app here. So it's sort of becoming, with electric at least, and I guess that's where we see the most innovation. Almost a necessity, right, to have to have an app, right?
Well, my next long termer was a Mercedes EQA, and it of course had the app and full connectivity, and it was just brilliant. So much better. Just to sort of, it increases sort of the enjoyment of the car for me too. As you can just check on things. You can turn the air conditioning on before you get to the car, which is absolutely the best thing in the world ever. So in the middle of summer, you're heading back to the car, crank the aircon up. Thank you.
If you remember,
I get back to the car and should have done
that's
that.
probably something where there might be some triggers through apps and so on, where it can automate that.
And I'm sure that's all. That'll all happen. But BYD is probably the next one to do sort of the proper full connected thing.
Yes,
with the Atto 3 and other cars they're going to bring. But they're doing the whole onboard SIM data connection thing, and there's going to have its own app store and all sorts of things. And I mean, the car itself is utterly fantastic now. Just feels like that once they get that up and running, which should be very soon, it's going to be so much better.
Yep, definitely going to have to have a chat to them and take it for a spin, because I do keep hearing very, very positive things about it. And I guess that this is one of the biggest moves, and if we sort of step back a little bit, look at the big changes in the auto industry over recent decades, you've got electric and just these technological pieces that have come, and then you've got China. Certainly going back a decade, the idea of buying a Chinese vehicle, I don't know whether how people would have felt about that, but well, I mean, now in part with Tesla, I guess you could say that's a part of the legitimization, is that the best Tesla vehicles are the Chinese made ones, not the American made, right? So that in itself makes a statement for the rest of the industry, I suppose.
Well, the thing about the sort of whole Chinese manufacturers, they will build to whatever quality level you want to pay for.
Yeah.
So if you want cheap crap, they'll build that. If you want something good, they'll build that, but you have to pay more for it. But the rise of the Chinese car industry is particularly fascinating, because you've seen it over the decades when Japanese cars first being sold in New Zealand. There was that joke about, don't polish the paint too hard, you'll see the baked bean tin labels through it, and all that sort of Japanese cars were rubbish. Well, now Japanese cars are like, one of the standards for quality cars. Korean cars came into the country. They were cheap rubbish, and now you got Hyundai making $100,000 cars that are absolutely amazing, and all of that. And I also said the Japanese manufacturers learned fast, the Korean manufacturers learned even faster, and the Chinese are just even faster still, because literally, say a decade ago, the Chinese cars you could buy were utter garbage. They'd be rusting on the yard before they'd even moved out. But the leaps they have taken in that short time is absolutely incredible. There's still sort of an unknown quantity in that they, like something like the BYD Atto or the MGZS are really good for the money, but we don't know quite what the longevity,
they
the
just haven't been around long enough.
Because they haven't been around long enough.
And that was one of the things where I thought, having just spent a few days with the MGZS EV, and I think it was the $54,000 model, or just shy of 54, slightly cheaper one, just under the 50. But by the time you get the rebate, it's only just over 41 $1,000.
Still is the cheapest EV in new EV rather in New Zealand.
Well, 7-year unlimited kilometre warranty. I mean, I don't know if anyone else is doing that other than
Mitsubishi with their 10-year. But they obviously don't have any EVs to offer yet. But, I think,
but that's a pretty, you come in at a good price point and then you throw that in.
Yeah.
And they do something as well around the warrant of fitness as well.
Yeah, there's roadside
in terms
assist
of covering those.
It's probably
during that period. It's
probably the most comprehensive
impressive
warranty in the country.
Yeah,
which says a lot about their confidence in the cars, which obviously gives you a bit of peace of mind there. And yeah, like I say, I had that first generation ZS EV as a long termer, and it's got its quirks. It's got a few sort of oddities and things like that, but I absolutely loved the thing. I absolutely adored it. It was just a great little car. I think the new one's fantastic too, but the time I've spent in it, it's sort of, they've made it a bit too nice, a bit too sort of, I like the fact that the other one was a bit mad. It had all its power low down and it would smash off the line at a ridiculous rate. They've made this a bit more growing up. The new one. That's just me. That's just the motoring journalist who likes going quickly away from the traffic lights.
I enjoy that too. In fact, had a friend try it after I used his charger over the weekend, and he's got a Model Y and another one on order, and he felt that, and admittedly we were driving in a 50k zone, so it wasn't sort of straight through 100 Ks, but he felt, this feels very similar actually to the Model Y in terms of the the pace when he put his foot down,
which is probably no coincidence whatsoever, because you can probably be fairly certain that MG would have bought a Model Y. Thought, okay, we'll do this. We don't need to have it go as quickly off the line as it was going with the old model, so we'll make it a bit more, refined, what the customers want, and all of that nonsense, not what the motoring journalists want, which they should be making cars.
But I thought it was a good experience. As on the tech front, you get a little wireless charger there for a phone. As far as I'm aware, it doesn't have wireless Android Auto or wireless CarPlay. But you've got a couple of jacks there. One thing I think is a shortcoming, and it's not specific to MG. Well, it might be actually. You can tell me if you've noticed this. But the two USB ports, there was a USB-A and a USB-C, and I had a USB-C to Lightning cable, plugged that in. Why is the iPhone not coming up? And actually just one of the ports
only one's a data.
Was sort of dedicated for the data side so that you could, put your phone up. And I thought,
why?
Come on. We should have come far enough now. You can have two active ports and, both of these would, or either of these should suit being able to mirror your screen.
Not specific to MG, but some other brands do it, and it's equally infuriating. I don't understand it.
Anyway, it's small things, as you've sort of alluded to, different price points. You're going to get a different quality and capability. Absolutely. But my feeling of my time with the MG ZS EV is that sort of price point, which after your rebate, just 41 350 or something, it's pretty impressive.
Absolutely.
Impressive value.
Yep.
Yes, MG make SUVs sort of down probably under maybe under 30k.
Yeah,
now,
well,
right?
the ICE, the standard ICE ZS is about 25 to 30 odd.
Yeah.
So if you look at it in those terms, you're paying quite a lot more for the EV version.
Yep.
But you look at it in the terms of even the ICE ZS is cheap for what it offers. It could easily be a $30,000-$40,000 car in its own right.
Yep.
So the electric one is remarkably good value for money. And like I say, getting back, not wanting to draw attention away from the MG, but getting back to the BYD, it sort of takes it a step further, in that it's arguably the first EV that you could say is actually cheap for what it offers.
What's the price point for the BYD?
I knew you were going to ask me that, and I can't remember off the top of my head. Slightly more than the MG.
Yeah.
I think the top spec MG is about the same price as the bottom spec Atto, but the bottom spec, call it the bottom spec Atto, it gets the same equipment levels as the Dira one, it just has a slightly smaller battery.
The difference in range, so yeah, they're starting at 54,
That's right,
490
they have
plus
gone
the
up a
on-road
tad
costs.
since, yeah.
So, it's a reasonable sort of step up, but you're bumping up the range quite a bit. You're still a chunk below, what you're going to get out of a standard Tesla, but still not too shabby there. I mean, they've got a couple of different options, I think, but the base one, 50 kilowatt hour battery, which is similar size to the
Yes, it's the same as
MG, but it does appear to get a slightly better range.
Yeah.
So
Because
but still
BYD is they make their own batteries. Obviously, they're a battery manufacturer before they started building cars. But their battery technology is a couple of levels above, well, a lot of the other manufacturers, to be honest, but certainly MG and the likes.
Yeah, the range, I think that the MG, when it first came out, was coming through about
263.
Yeah,
I can remember the first
yeah,
one.
yeah,
263 Ks, easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas that's now up, I think, around
Closer to
320 odd. And the Atto 3 is saying 345. Now, of course, these aren't the real world. They're that obviously depends on how you drive and varying other factors, where you're driving, how cold it is, and the like, right?
I genuinely found when I had the long-term ZS, it was largely very consistent at what it would deliver, and it was getting pretty much what the 263 quite easily most of the time. So I was quite impressed, and that was me enjoying the performance away from the traffic lights on a regular basis. Obvious.
Yeah. So but look, I think we're in an exciting position in terms of where the tech's at now, where it's going, and I mean, you mentioned Korean vehicles, sort of what's happening on that front. There's some I think
amazing stuff.
Some very slick vehicles that kind of that certainly in terms of the look compared to say Tesla and others, I think some of the Korean products.
Hyundai's doing some amazing looking stuff, and
very very slick. Looks real kind of techie, cutting edge. Really quite an exciting time, I think, to be looking at vehicles, and no doubt we'll have some other interesting discussions in the years ahead. I mean, there's a whole lot on the safety side that seems to just continue to iterate.
The whole autonomous driving thing is the big sort of elephant in the room at the moment, and that everyone's pouring vast sums of money into it, but still not really happening.
I see Waymo have extended what they're doing into Los Angeles. So so there's now a few places, Arizona and I think Phoenix, and then you've got on West Coast anyways, that direction, Los Angeles and San Francisco. So it's getting easier if you want to go and sit in one of these vehicles and get a ride. It's improving, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things that we saw when we were over at GM's proving grounds were a whole huge fleet of the Cruise Origin, fully autonomous pods, all just doing. Yeah, they obviously. I think they must have used them to transport people around the proving grounds, because people were just sitting there, they were going everywhere. And one of the things we really wanted to do, we wanted to try and have a stopover in San Francisco so we could all go and try one of them, but didn't work out. But the other thing that we got a chance to do too was to try the Super Cruise. And the Cadillacs. On the open road on the way to the Milford Proving Grounds.
Because that's kind of their Autopilot.
That's their equivalent of Autopilot, and it blew me away, to be honest. And that it keeps itself centered so brilliantly, and it reacts like you would. You see something over here, you think, oh, they're going to do that. And it sees it. I picked up my phone to take a photo. Look, I'm driving no hands. As soon as I put my phone up, flashes up a warning. Put your phone down. It's like, wow, that's fairly impressive. The only thing it didn't do was got into the wrong lane when we were wanting to get off, but it didn't know we were wanting to get off.
Right.
So it was going out. It would just go out past cars on its own accord, but it was just I can't remember how many cameras are in the cockpit watching you. It keeps as good an eye on you as it does on what's on the outside to make sure you're paying attention at all times.
Yeah.
I think that's where Cadillac's or GM's sort of advantage in that area is that they concentrate as much on the driver as they do as on the actual car. But apparently the next level of Super Cruise, they are integrating with Google Maps. So if you set the destination, then it will know that you need to be in that lane to get off.
Right, but more like the Navigate on Autopilot.
Yes, and what Mercedes are doing with their lot too. So
Yeah.
But it really surprised me how sort of seamless and predictable it was.
Yeah.
Which I've never experienced before, not even in like Tesla or Mercedes or any of those other ones.
Yeah,
so
the safety improvements I think is really exciting, and I know in New Zealand we've got this goal to get to sort of 0 road deaths, which to me seems like, well, that's a really long-term goal. And also it's like, well, technology's going to deliver that, more than anything else that New Zealand can do, right? Sure, we could slow people down to driving 2 kilometres an hour, and you could go to sort of extremes, but when there are people involved, stuff happens, right?
Yeah.
It's like trying to get the drowning down, while people are allowed to jump in the water and so on, which you can't not.
The speed limit literally could be 2 kilometres an hour, and people would still find ways to kill themselves on the road. So that's always going to be the case. But a nice target, it's an admirable goal, but it's probably not one you're ever going to realistically hit unless we are all in autonomous pods.
You're not allowed to hold a steering wheel.
No input from any human being involved whatsoever.
And take control. Yeah. The friend who saw over the weekend, and he was telling me about his Model Y. He said, wife was Model Y, came into an intersection. She had the right of way. Another vehicle came into the intersection that shouldn't have. And quite an unusual configuration. I didn't get him to show me on the map where it was exactly and what the detail was. But he said, it was a bit complicated. You could understand how maybe the other driver got mixed up. But he said the Tesla Autopilot figured it out and put the brakes on, and where there would have been an accident, there wasn't. He just said he was so blown away with that that aspect of it. And I think this is what's going to become the norm, and we will see that road to zero. I think that the technology will bring about huge changes, but it's just a matter of kind of time for the fleet to change over to these vehicles that have got this level of smarts, and whether the examples are set by Mercedes or Tesla or whichever company sort of bring it ultimately goes across the all of the vehicles over time, doesn't it?
That's how all automotive technology has always worked. It starts at the high-end expensive stuff, and then it trickles its way down. Seat belts, airbags, all of that sort of stuff was offered on the absolute top models first, worked its way down. I mean, now we've got Suzuki Swift with radar adaptable cruise control.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much sort of a standard thing across most new cars these days. And that was something that, not even 10 years ago, was amazing new technology that was,
Yeah, and it's funny for us to, you mentioned seatbelts, because I think probably so many of us wouldn't have even imagined that there would have been vehicles without seatbelts, right?
Yeah, can't imagine.
But actually, that was one of the industry's sort of big changes to address.
Yeah, well, even in America, it's still a bit of a struggle these days.
Yeah.
Well, and airbags again. You couldn't sell a vehicle now without airbags. I think Mercedes pretty much invented them back in the late 70s, early 80s. And again, the first airbag was in the S-Class. Yep. And it was sold as a luxury feature on this luxury car, and now they're everywhere.
Yeah. Well, there were a couple of other things I was hoping to dive into, but I kind of think we've spent all the time talking cars and car tech and stuff.
That happens when you bring a car guy and we just talk cars the whole time.
That's been pretty cool, so really good to catch up, Damien. Now, for folks that are wanting to sort of keep a track of some of what you do, where's the place to find you?
I'm a sporadic user of most social media outlets, but Oversteer NZ tends to be my handle on everything, not LinkedIn. Probably just my name if I'm on
Damien
LinkedIn.
O'Carroll.
Yep. So it's something that I have drifted away from over the last few years as being the motoring editor of stuff. I've been busy with that. But now that I'm heading back to the freelance world, I'll certainly become a bit more of a regular social media user. So,
good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, great to catch up. Thanks for sharing some of your experiences and insights. And I mean, what really is, I think, one of the most exciting areas of where tech is facilitating some pretty big changes. So,
certainly the rate of change is quite dramatic.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks for listening in. We'll be back again next week, of course. And a big thank you to our show partners, to Vodafone, 2 Degrees, Spark, HP, Gorilla Technology, and Deal. Now, if you've been watching the live stream, I would encourage you to go and fire up podcast app on your mobile. You can subscribe there for free to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. If you've been listening to us through a normal audio podcast app, if you want to catch the live streams, certainly follow me on LinkedIn. That's probably where the most live viewers that we sort of tend to get. But also you can follow on YouTube, and you have to hit the bell and so on to catch those, because the live, I guess, is about catching the show the first as we come out. For later on, then most of that tends to happen through a podcast app. But if you want to get it first, then that's the way to find it, as well. Twitter and Facebook for the video. Thanks, Damien.
Thank you.
So thanks everyone. We'll look forward to catching you again next week. All right, see ya.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.